why don't we go ahead and get started, and I'll just orient us to this conversation a little bit. For those of you who are new to Fieldwork, we are an incubator for social good leaders and startups. We believe in the world's best future, and one of the ways that we are participating in creating that future is through meaningful work. And so whether you are an intrapreneur, an entrepreneur, you are a small team or a business or an organization that is trying to create good culture in the world for the benefit of all people, we really invite you to join our community as we learn to know ourselves so we can lead ourselves and lead each other and lead others into creating that meaningful work together. And so we have guides in our communities, advisors, mentors, experts in different fields that we are inviting in to join this webinar series, this Lunch and Learn series, every Wednesday at noon. And they're just walking us through a deep dive into a specific tool or framework or a methodology that we can implement into our own work, no matter what it is. And so we're really excited to have Ashlee Sirkorski here. She is one of our Fieldwork guides, and I'll let her speak more to it, but she is a certified coach with a practice up in Oregon, where she really guides leaders and teams and organizations into with this bend towards emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and really bringing a humanity to their leadership and their work. And so, Ashlee, we're really excited for you to be here and to be joining us for this conversation. And just to orient us to this webinar, in the chat feature, if you have a question that comes up with some of the things that Ashlee's sharing or the conversation that we're having in, please drop your question in there. And at the end, we will have a time to kind of address those questions. So as things come up and you don't want to forget it, go ahead and drop your question in the chat, and then I'll kind of facilitate that Q&A towards the end of our time. But Ashlee, thanks so much for being here. Why don't you just share with us, what does work and life look like for you in this season? Not necessarily the confines of the pandemic just yet, but just overall, what does work and life look like for you right now?
Yeah, so life right now, I'm going to mention food again. I'm such a foodie with a strong self-preservation instinct. So I've been making a lot of handmade pasta, spending a lot of time with my husband, and my hobbies. I really like to sew and go on extremely long walks. We've been walking all the way downtown, which is like 10 miles from our house, and doing these pilgrimages on Saturday. And then my coaching practice. So as Jonathon said, I'm a certified coach, and I specialize in emotional intelligence and also a personality framework called the Enneagram, where I'm certified in teaching that framework. And I've had my coaching practice for the last 3 years. And what that has looked like is working with teams and organizations and leaders in corporate spaces from small to medium-sized companies, and really working with them to connect with their truest sense of self, learning what their core values are and how they're living them out, what aligns with their company and their organization and what doesn't, and what sort of company culture are they building, and is that what their employees would say what their company culture is. And how do we define company culture, right? It's not necessarily what we do, but how the employees are, how they're being, how they treat one another, which is so much around humanity and human connection. I also have a brand which is just exclusively Enneagram tools, or like an Enneagram toolkit called 9 Shapes, where there's resources online and then also some hard copy resources such as the conversational cards, which I know you're familiar with.
Yes, we have a copy at our Costa Mesa location. And so when we get the green light and we're back up and running, we'll have a time of playing 9 Shapes and having that conversation card game. It's really fun. It's a really great tool for just catalyzing conversation. So I encourage you guys to look into that. Why don't we do this in the chat? If you're on, go ahead and share if you know your Enneagram number, and if you know your wing or your instinct, go ahead and share that in the chat. It'd be fun to see just kind of like who we have with us. What is your Enneagram number, Ashlee?
So I lead with a self-preservation 4.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I'm sure if you don't know and you're really curious about what that means, you can connect with Ashlee and she can help guide you into that framework. But it's fun to see kind of who we
Yeah,
have.
and we had some folks share. We have a 9, a 2 wing 3, self-preservation 3 wing 4. Wow, that person knows Enneagram. That's brand new
Yes.
for me.
Yes. So it's fun to see just the different kinds of people. To your point about how human connection is so vital and needed, because of how we're wired and have just differences at our core, but similarities that we need to talk about. So last week we had a conversation with Jeff Tanner, our founder and CEO, and he was walking us through how to think about business model pivoting and shift in just response to this time that we're in, this, COVID-19 pandemic and some of its implications in the economy and in our markets that we're playing in our industries that we're leading in. So I'm curious, with what you just described with your practice, that's such a high touch, really interpersonal kind of work. How have you even had to like pivot or shift in the way that you're delivering value to the people you work with?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, one thing I didn't mention is I'm actually in a process of a rebrand as well. And this process was happening before I knew about COVID-19 reaching the States, and just couldn't anticipate what was going to happen. So I've pivoted in both successful and unsuccessful ways. And so essentially the rebrand is going from my practice just being my name, Ashlee Sirkorski Coaching, to Sway Leadership, which is a leadership development company.
Sneak peek, everyone. Live breaking news.
And that's just because the name was just this uncreative placeholder in a way. It was like a first draft of what I was doing and really getting my footing of, why am I a coach? What does this mean? Who do I serve? And then I really realized, okay, I serve leaders. And I follow the philosophy of leadership where Parker Palmer says, if you live in community, you're either a leader or a follower. And so a leader doesn't have to be the CEO of a company or middle management or a director, but leaders are the people that are releasing authentic energy into organizations. And so I work with folks to target who those people are, who are people that they see potential, and then give them the space to refine their leadership skills. And build the company culture that they want. So ways that I've failed in doing this, instantly when everything was happening, I took my services and just made them virtual. And that's how I failed. I didn't pause. I didn't ask my audience what they wanted. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can sign up for a Zoom account. That's $14.99. Great. Let's do these workshops, these team retreats, just online. And no one went for it. And I had a couple of contracts in process. One was like a really, really big one with a company here in town. And yeah, they were like, no, we're actually going to put our resources somewhere else. I'm like, okay. And then another company said no. And then another company was interested. And then they said no. So that wasn't working. And essentially I'm like, okay, you know what? We're going to take these day team trainings around the Enneagram and make them 4 hours online. And I'm going to send you 9 shapes. I'm going to send you a copy of the booklet, and it's going to be great. But no one went for it. And it's because it's not what people needed. People were and still are in this chronic fight or flight mode, and they're needing a space to process and to say, no, I'm not doing well. I'm not my best right now. Because no one's at their best right now. And maybe people who externally seem like they aren't in touch with some of the deeper things that are going on with them. So I also had a panic mode when that happened, because I lost a lot of revenue. Vulnerability moment here. I wasn't able to pay myself for 2 months. At that point, I was a sole proprietor. So in Oregon, I didn't qualify for unemployment, and it was really stressful. It also allowed me to take a step back, breathe, pause, reconnect with what my mission was, and actually ask people, okay, what is that you need in this season? Yeah. And so since then, I've developed these online leadership cohorts and workshops for people from different companies to connect. And the model is really simple. There's about 10% of content and then 90% of process. So we talk about, how do we see the stress of leading a company show up in our bodies?
Yeah.
And we do an exercise, and then we do essentially group facilitation. And then that has been really successful. And I'm actually going to launch another one coming up, and it's served a couple different populations.
Wow. Thanks for walking us through that whole process from start to finish, because I think a lot of us can resonate with some of the okay, great, we're going to just pivot really hard towards being online, and something that's needed. It's I mean, we're having this conversation virtually as just a channel that we can utilize, which is great. But the process of stopping and listening, I think that's the takeaway I'm already having right now, is listening to what your customers and your audience actually needs. And it may not be what you think that it is that they need, or their needs may have changed, but you can still deliver value in that way. I'm going to come back to some of what you talked about, helping us get in touch with what's happening maybe in our bodies, and maybe giving us a way to do that. Because as you say that, I think as an Enneagram type 7 who lives, in my head, that jumps from being in my head to kind of getting in touch with my body and in this present moment can be hard jump to make. So I'll come back to that. But just kind of zooming out even to, what have you noticed as just trends with a lot of us taking our services, our programming online, having to communicate with our teams online. So that's an increase of email, an increase of social media posts, an increase of Zoom meetings or webinars or going live on Instagram. I was joking the other day that everybody has at least gone live on Instagram or made a TikTok account. So we're just trying all these new channels. Just what are some trends that you've even noticed from the perspective of emotional intelligence and how that human connection that is either there or not there from your perspective?
Yeah, I feel like it's really sharpening that divide where I'm seeing a lot of leaders, and I want to say that a majority of people I'm coaching right now just happen to be in the tech world. And what I'm hearing from their employees is their leaders aren't doing well. And that it comes out in two ways. And it comes out with being overly positive and trying to encourage them, okay, we're going to get through this. It's going to be better, and we're going to go back to normal, and it's going to be great, and you're amazing. And just kind of missing the present moment and not calling out what's going on. There was a helpful reframe that someone in my leadership cohort said, she's like, people keep on saying that we're working from home in this global crisis, and we just need to take care of ourselves. But actually, we're in a global crisis. We have to be at home, and we're trying to work. And that was a really helpful, even just verbal reframe. So that piece of being overly positive. And then also I saw in the first month, in particular with these tech companies, and maybe because they just had to, because they're really busy right now, with everybody being online, is this push for their workers and overworking them essentially. So a lot of report back from employees feeling like a cog in a machine and being overworked. But I do see that there are companies and people who are managing companies who were able to take a step back, pause, read the situation, call out the present moment, and really engage with the reality of what's happening. And I call those leaders, and just to give a number, maybe 10% who are able to do that. And they're really leading from a place of being grounded. So they're okay, I need to take care of myself first. I need to be grounded. And after I'm grounded and understand this, at least a little bit, even if I understand it 5% more than I did yesterday, that's movement. coming to their team and being vulnerable and honest and being like, hey, this is where we're at. This is still what we're about. And we're not going to know what's going to happen next week, but this is what we're going to do today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love the way you painted like the gutters of that over positivity, or even I think depending on your, bend or personality makeup, maybe a lack of communication. And it just reminds me of something that we say at Fieldwork, where one of the main capabilities of a leader is sense making, right? Just helping to make sense of things, yes, including how we're showing up to these conversations, how we're showing up to these times. You mentioned this phrase grounding that I want to talk about.
Okay.
And you said that, if these are the leaders that really stand out and keep those human connections are the ones who pause and check in with themselves enough to make sure that they're grounded. And we also say something that every organizational strength and challenge flows from the heart of the leader. And so typically
so true.
Company culture, the team culture is really just a mirror of the leaders who are shaping it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about grounding. I think we hear even a lot of messages right now, take care of yourself, like, some of that self-care kind of culture and mythology that gets thrown around a lot. But what does it really look like for a leader to be grounded in themselves and really get to know themselves enough to know how to stay in a grounded place and lead from that place?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that it looks different for everybody, but one of the oldest proverbs that we have is to know thyself and learn yourself. So having rhythms and practices and spaces that are just integrated into your daily life to do that, to look inward and ask yourself, okay, what's going on? And even bringing Enneagram into it, for instance, okay, every morning before I allow technology or the people I live with to affect what I'm thinking about and what I'm susceptible to, I'm gonna check in with myself. What's on my mind? What am I thinking about? Who am I mad at? What frustrations do I have? What am I not looking forward to today? What am I really excited about? And just kind of I call it this is adapted from Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, but just fill out a morning page. So just write what's coming up, even if it's I have a lot to do today. I'm not looking forward to it. Or, oh my gosh, I have this meeting. I have to talk to Jonathon today. I don't know what's going on with that. Obviously I'm teasing, but those are honest. It's just the honest thoughts of whatever comes up, let it rise, stream of consciousness. And then connect with your heart and say, okay, how am I really doing? What emotions am I having? Is this fear? Is this anger? Is this grief? Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm really sad. Oh, but I can't be sad because people are starving and I have food and I didn't lose my job. I get to work. No, that's just unproductive and not helpful. But really allow yourself to be sad and sit there. And then checking in with your body. So whether that's going for a walk or meditation, doing a body scan, or I do a 5-minute yoga in the morning, which is all that I have capacity for. And I'm not good at all. I'm okay, it's done now. But during that space, actually, so I'm lead with the heart type. But actually getting out of my heart and getting out of my head and checking in with my body, being I have a lot on my shoulders right now. I feel a lot of pressure at work. I'm carrying a lot. And so when I say get grounding, it just takes a lot of work. And I find the leaders that are most impactful are willing to undergo this profound and meaningful change within themselves, which is, just what you were talking about, the heart of the organization and the heart of the leader being connected.
Yeah. Wow. That's really helpful. I want to remind everybody too, if you have a question that's just kind of coming up, maybe you're well, I've never taught that before. I've never thought to do a practice like that. Go ahead and drop it into the chat. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions for Ashlee. It's interesting to recap kind of what I heard you saying is we kind of, some of us, and this is kind of from an Enneagram perspective, we kind of live in different places, either the head, the heart, or the gut. And the body, kind of like taking in information, like taking in the world, like primarily through that way. But those other two places are like at play, and they can go neglected or go, not really tended to. So a practice like that of kind of going through all three and checking in, what am I thinking about? How am I feeling, about that, or about my day or my life at the moment? And then like kind of engaging the body in that too is just, I can already feel myself opening up differently.
Wow.
And kind of expanding,
Yeah.
in that. Talk to us about how to make that turn then from that grounded place, like inviting our teams and our, the audiences that we're serving, to connecting with them more at a human place. Like if we can do that, be grounded ourselves, then inviting them into that, or creating spaces like that, albeit through email or social media or Zoom calls, as whatever it may be. But how do we make that turn from ourselves into kind of leading others?
Yeah, well, it starts with ourselves. And I think there's this natural like flow or transition that does and can happen next. But a really like practical thought here is to keep it simple, keep it primal. How are you feeling? What are you scared of right now? Reminder to check in with yourself. Even you're saying you're hearing a lot of that on social media, which actually I'm not a fan of being more noise. Like if you don't have anything like really beneficial to say, don't just try to post to keep up and try to, because that's gonna not end out. That's not gonna end up. It's not gonna turn out well, I think.
Yeah.
Because then you're just always trying to catch up. You're being responsive. Using FieldWRK's language instead of being you're being reactive instead of being responsive.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
But also, just people can't come up with new thoughts or creative ideas or a different way of living when they have cortisol released in their system. So I mentioned before that we're in this chronic fight or flight stage right now.
Yeah.
As a society,
right? As a hive,
as a hive. And so when that's happening, it's really hard. I mean, it's like actually it's physically impossible to think innovatively unless we distress ourselves and calm down. And so in whatever ways we're doing that, and whatever your industry is, invite people into that process. And then I would say keep the questions simple, keep them primal, and ask people, how are you taking care of yourself during this time? Be generous if you're able to. I've really noticed companies, I'll give a couple of examples. Okay, yes, I'll give two examples. One is Chipotle, one is JP Morgan Bank. So Chipotle, I'm having a lot of positive brand associations with right now, because they're saying, you know what? We see that people are hungry. We see that they're in need. And this is what we're doing. We're giving our employees 10% more income during this time until whatever, July, something, they have a date. We're also going to serve the community by extending our local farm contracts so that they know that we're here for them. And then you have JP Morgan Bank, who is, really, there's a lot of companies benefiting from what's going on right now, where, I've just seen, because that's somebody that I've banked with, but all their messaging is so corporate and sterile, and it's like, hey, we're doing our best right now, so you can still take a loan from us because you're a business, and what, the interest rate is only 15%. It's actually not that high, but it's something like drastic like that. So it's like, so we got you, and it's like, no, you do not. So there's this negative association with this brand, and those are just like two examples. So thinking about what your brand is, saying, okay, what do I actually have to offer? How can I connect with my customer in a really like simple and honest way, and move forward with that messaging? And especially because folks are so stressed out right now, they're really going to connect with something simple. Even how I just I remembered what FieldWRK posted, like, oh yeah, they said be responsive, not reactive. It's just like so simple, so quick. The brain wants little information to process.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way you say that. I immediately thought of our property managers at our apartment. They probably texted us and emailed us 5 times like a week in March leading up to April. and it was, you know, we're responding to, you know, the crisis, and this is like, it was just all the typical expected crisis language, but the point of it was, so make sure you sign up for online, like automatic payments. And the like tone was absolutely like they were just worried about not getting paid. And, you know, so us and our neighbors were just like, this is insane. Like, we're just bogged down with the messaging that was non-empathetic. I think about, you know, when you want to position yourself as a guy, to use story brand language to be empathetic and authoritative at the same time. And what's interesting about the Chipotle example was that it was all good news, even if it doesn't affect me. But it was good news for their team. It was good news for their, you know, the farmers they work with. And so leaning into the identity of the organization and the good news you want to be, and just sharing that as a way to invite people in, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it is like, again, that like, I mean, leading out of fear instead of leading out of love, and not being like overly generous or overly like everybody gets free coaching sessions now. Like, no, it doesn't. It's not like that. But also it's like looking inward and asking, okay, what do I really have to give at this time? Okay, I can't do that. That's overly generous. That's a good amount. Okay, I'm going to like process that and really refine that and then move forward with whatever that piece is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing a lot of, you know, listening first. What do my people need? How am I experiencing this time? And then what do I have to give that is uniquely me, like from our unique makeup, like we talked about, but that can be from a place of generosity. So you have a really unique position where you are kind of working with leaders and their teams. And so you get to hear kind of like, you know, the gap between how a leader is maybe perceiving company culture or team dynamics and how the team is actually providing the honest feedback. I imagine, like you mentioned, that the gap could be widening or just more pronounced maybe. What is, just as you're hearing that, are there any themes that you're hearing from employees, so that to our top leaders and those that are managing, you know, divisions or departments or you know, small businesses and their teams? How can like a leader lead their team more effectively, not just, you know, the messaging to their customers, their audiences, but what are you seeing as just like some of that gap, and how can we be aware of that? And in a Zoom, you know, team meeting or whatever it may be, or a company email, like how do we mend that gap a little bit more?
Okay. I want to make sure I understand your questions.
Yeah.
So
I gave a lot. I'm just soaking it in. I'm giving a lot.
No, it's really good, because I think there is a little bit of a rift, but not for the leaders who are able to like put down their guard. And I was being a little harsh before, because I have been coaching a lot of people that aren't getting the time and care that they need, and it's coming directly from the leaders not giving the time and care that they need. So that's interesting. But also I'm hearing a trend as well, that like teams are connecting with one another, potentially even at a deeper level. Where, you know, before they just kind of went into work, and now they're having these Zoom calls, and, you know, they're like, oh yeah, like I have a kid. They're like, you have a kid? Oh my gosh, that's great. It's like, yeah, actually I have 5 kids. And they're all here. And so there's like a connection amongst employees happening. And then, and I fear I'm not answering your question. So if you could like even feed them to me one by one. But I am also seeing that what had come up in the leadership cohorts is just people saying like, and these are like talented, seasoned, like these are like the really quality leaders too that said this. Yeah. The ones that are showing up to the leadership cohorts, right? That are like, hey, yeah, like I need a spot to process because there's so much expectation on me and I don't know how I'm going to move forward, and I might have to sell my business, or we're doing layoffs, or like bringing just really heavy things that they need to process. And yeah, I feel like there's this element of like needing a space to like purge or vent. I mean, and I'm just kind of saying the same thing, but then getting grounded from that space. Yeah.
No, it reminds me of, we talked about this as a team, and even Jeff shared this in last week's Lunch and Learn webinar, that the need for lamenting, you know, and lamenting like first, like a lot of us have kind of bypassed that in this kind of like, okay, what do we need to do to pivot, to message, to market? But like, no, what's needed is more so a space to even protest and that's what lament is oftentimes like saying that's not right, or that's not okay, or this is too much and too big. And then after the airing that out, then saying what are the options on the table, making sense of it, reducing the ambiguity so that, you know, the path can become clearer, or options of path can become clearer. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and then I think too, and it just really depends on what industry you're in. So I'm not trying to be so abstract. So I'll try to be like a little bit more practical. Like doing things where you're allowing your team to process can be really powerful. So one of the reasons the leadership cohorts were really successful was there were 10% content, and then a lot of like breakout sessions, a lot of group shares, a lot of questions that people are being asked, where I'm hearing from employees being like, yeah, my boss, we're doing these like Monday 8 a.m. meetings, which is never a good time for a staff meeting. I'm sorry.
Not a good time.
No, I'm just like, why? But it comes from like, I want to set the tone for my team. I want to make sure they're being productive, right? That's kind of flowing out of that right now. But just like not telling everybody like, okay, this is what's going on. So it's like, you know, you need to be making sense of the situation a little bit and articulating it, but then also ask your employees, like, how are you articulating this? How are you making sense of this, and giving them the space and also authority to rise and process. Yeah, I mean, Simon Sinek has been coming out with a lot of work around building safe cultures. And the more I do work with teams, I'm seeing that people don't feel safe where they work. I don't know if it's a majority of people. This isn't like my specialty, but as I talk with people, even in coaching, it's like, oh, like you don't even feel like you can tell your boss, like, this is a bad time for a meeting.
Yeah. What does that say? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm hearing that as just, again, the refrain of this conversation, I feel like, is just listening to ourselves and how we're experiencing the time first, primarily, so we can get to that grounded place, listening to our customers and the audiences that we're serving, and what is it that they actually need. And it may be different than what we thought or would wish that they would want. And then listening to our teams about, you know, how to best serve them. And there is an opportunity, like you talked about, with this camaraderie, this deepened sense of like, we got through this together, and that is something that could be a gift on the other side of this, if we tend to it and even resource it, like you said, with these opportunities to process, like, what could the like in the trenches effect be like? And, you know, like, remember, we did this together, and leaning into creating those kind of spaces of processing together could just be that, just to create that shared sense of experience that becomes that shared sense of memory, which is what a lot of culture is created for. And you mentioned something about even the reframe that one of your clients mentioned about, you know, we're in a crisis, and, you know, we have to leave this, and then like, oh yeah, and we're trying to get work done at home. So talk to us about working from home, and even ways to stay grounded. What practices have you even seen or been implementing that we can kind of keep in that healthy core grounded place and lead from that, but in a time when maybe our lives are, for some, maybe this has been their norm, but others have been thrust into it, where it's kind of integrated at best and enmeshed at worst. What have you seen in terms of working from home, and some of that kind of collision of like work life, and how have you even like physically, or, you know, in yourself, like done that well, or tips for that?
Yeah. And I'm going to use the Enneagram as a framework. So also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat box, especially as I present this framework. But we talked a little bit, very briefly, we mentioned the Enneagram instincts. So the idea is here that every human being has these 3 instincts. And obviously we have much more than just these 3, but Enneagram theory focuses on this self-preservation instinct. This, I have a desire to stay alive and protect myself and keep my house clean and maybe groom myself a little bit more. Self-preservation types tend to be a little bit more organized. They tend to hoard food or supplies or material goods. And then we have a social instinct. So we have these social types who they really need to find a place in their community. So they need to make sure that there is a place for them, and they almost like to position themselves as a hero a little bit, in the way that's like, okay, my community needs this, I got it, I can develop it. And it looks differently amongst the 9 Enneagram types. And they have this like very just instant capacity to see who the community is and who the tribe is and what the needs are. And it's a wonderful skill. And then you have the sexual instinct, or in business world, we'll call it one-to-one, because it's this intense focus on one person or one project, whether that's a spouse or a best friend or a colleague, but they really desire intimacy. Like even how you and I are just talking one-on-one, for someone who is one-to-one dominant or sexual dominant, that's like a really easy thing for them. And so something that I'm seeing a lot from working from home is these instincts at play. And we have all 3, but there's just kind of one that's distorted, and like one that's risen to the top, one that's a close second, and then one that's repressed, that it doesn't get activated when we need it to be. And folks, and this isn't for all types, because there's some types that it doesn't show up, but I've noticed folks with a strong social instinct having a harder time being at home, having a harder time leading their community, having a harder time figuring out, okay, like how can I be there for people? How can I serve? Because it's like their instinct has to do with your reptilian brain or your animal-like instinct, and it's like this automatic response. And then self-preservation types, do I have everything I need? Do I have enough toilet paper? Do I have enough food in the fridge? Am I eating enough chocolate cake? I'm a self-pres over here. My house is so clean. I will show you my closet, my pantry, my desktop. It's looking real good. And maybe that type is being a little bit more insular, and needing to be pulled out. Potentially needing to be pulled out of that space. And then depending on who you're connecting with on a daily basis, the one-to-one types, what does that look like for you to have intimacy, have a best friend? Some people have a housemate or a partner, but some people don't. Some people are living alone, and that's really arduous for them. Yeah, so that's just kind of like a paint swash framework that I've just, since it's my specialty, just paying attention to. Because my husband and I, and so he leads with type 5. He's a 1-to-1 5. So I get a lot of his attention, and as does his passion projects, which is poetry, and a self-preservation 4, I lead with that. We're actually like not minding the space too much. It's like, oh, this is like, it's kind of nice, like get to breathe, get to read, get to be with myself and my emotions and my thoughts, right? So that's kind of interesting. But then, we'll FaceTime or talk with friends being like, this has been one of the hardest seasons of my life. No one's reaching out to me. Where is my community? I don't get to be at my favorite coffee shop every day. I don't get to make my team laugh. I miss making my team laugh.
Right.
And
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's helpful for us to try to do some self-assessment on one of those. Which of those do we resonate with? Do we find ourselves leaning into it? And even just like you mentioned, like recognizing that that's not the same for everybody. So if you're loving this, to not think that everybody else is loving this, but there's some of that, like people are struggling, and so minding that difference as we engage with each other, whatever channel it may be in. And then recognizing that if that's what you need, then allowing yourself even the permission to, before you jump into the big project, like get your kitchen in order, get your house, do those things that make you feel like you're kind of at a good place. So again, if you have a question about the Enneagram framework, about the different instinctual centers that she mentioned and how that may be at play for you, or even some of the leading from that place of emotional connection and human connection and emotional intelligence, please drop it into the chat. We have one from Christian Rivera. So Christian is starting a new church endeavor, which is it's an insane time to be starting this, and he's starting it from home. And he's wondering if there's any practical advice for establishing rhythms and foundations for starting this new venture, but with a human touch, while being in this digital world. So imagine, launching, like you are launching your new brand, but launching a church which is, built upon a lot of human connection. But in this time and place, what are even some practical, and I like that he uses the word rhythm. What rhythms even could you suggest or help them explore as the foundation of this new venture?
Yes. So good. So a couple of things with Zoom calls, and depending on how many people are there, I've actually attended a lot of, I've attended a handful of like church services, because now people are able to which is cool that you get to see like all these different, like, oh yeah, this is an Anglican church in London. I would prefer to go here than anywhere else.
Right.
But also, I attended one and it was like pre-recorded, and it was an Easter service, and it was so perfect and polished that it was all, and then this is just my personal take, but even a little like, oh, I wonder like if members in the congregation really connected to that, right? Some people might be a little bit more heady and they like, oh, this is like really cool. But what does it look like to have this space? And Christian, I'd be curious like what your goal is here, but just talking about human touch, some really like practical resources is Zoom. So the breakout sessions in Zoom, utilizing chat, and as basically we're learning how to be digital leaders and digital facilitators. So people don't want to, obviously Lunch and Learn, you came knowing that you're going to be like listening to a discussion and it's more interactive and there's this chat box, but every 10 minutes, I would recommend people who are consuming your information doing something. So saying like, hey, that's a really great question, kind of how you did, Jonathon. If you know your Enneagram type, go ahead and like type it in the chat box. So someone's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to type it in the chat box. Or, and I'm going to talk about this, and maybe I'm going to give a sermon, but I'm going to break it up into, it's a 2-hour space, and I'm going to break it up into 5 different breakout sessions. And the more I'm leading these facilitation spaces, the feedback I've been getting from people is like, oh, 10 minutes wasn't enough to process. I'm like, wow, really? That's kind of a lot of space. Yeah. Okay, so you want 15 minutes. And then doing like a group share and asking, okay, what did I hear from the group? But I've been finding that when you do these breakout sessions and give people more space to process in like an organized way, being like, okay, this is the part of the sermon. What's resonating with you? What's not? I'm going to give you in a moment, I'm going to release everybody and give you 15 minutes to process this information. And we're going to come back as a group and connect. So that's one thought. Also, I encourage people to have their cameras on and make sure that they can be prepared to do that, especially like heart types. We've mentioned Enneagram now a couple times, but being like, like I'm here. They say 91% of communication is nonverbal. And when we have our cameras on, I'm like, okay, yeah. Ashlee's excited to be here. Her shoulders are back. Jonathon's like paying attention. He's thinking about the next question. And you're like able to like pick up on these little cues. So preparing people to have their cameras on, even if it's like chaotic at first, and saying, hey, everybody, we're here. It's chaotic. I'm Christian Rivera. This is what we're going to do today. And we're going to be messy together, but in an organized, prepared way. And it takes practice. It honestly, being a digital leader and facilitating takes a lot of work. And so maybe even like reach out to people who are doing it well and asking like, what's your secret? How do I organize an agenda? Also, people need to move at least every 60 minutes. So make sure you're giving physically, yeah.
Okay, say more.
Okay, so at the 60-minute mark at least, or 45 minutes if you're doing like a longer workshop, saying, okay, let's get our bodies moving. Always start with the why when you're telling your people that you're leading. Always start with the why. So we need to move our bodies. I'm sure some of you need to take a biological break. So I'm going to give everybody 7 minutes. So we're going to be back at this time to go move. So we'll meet in 7 minutes. And then, and then also, like, I've also led stretches being like, okay, I see your eyes are glazed over and you're tired. You know, we've been giving you so much content. Let's go ahead and stretch. And so actually, like, physically lead like your arms up in the air, like moving a little bit and calling out, being like, what is your body saying right now? And like, how are you taking care of it? And being a leader in that way, showing that that's normal, that's goofy, that's what's going on.
Yeah. So good. I feel like a couple of things that I heard is, you know, we're all digital leaders now, which means we're all like facilitators.
Yeah.
And as I heard you talk about the example of the church that was, you know, pre-recorded, high production, like that was great, but it maybe missed the medium, you know? And like something like a Zoom, like just honoring the medium, like Zoom has these capabilities.
Yeah,
if it is a broadcasting type of thing, then maybe like a YouTube Live makes more sense, or a Facebook Live when it's supposed to be just kind of like this one-to-many kind of broadcast. But if it is meant to be interactive and that's what people are used to, like to Christian's example, a church kind of community setting, then taking advantage of the way that the medium is set up, so the breakout sessions, and then seeing ourselves not just as content presenters, you know. And I think this applies even to people who are, you know, leading team meetings, or maybe on a sales pitch to, you know, customers. And there's something powerful about just leading people and setting tone and shaping paths and directing them, you know, even more so maybe than we think is necessary. But like you said, like your camera is going to be on, so make sure you feel prepared for that. And just those little details that help. I think what I'm just hearing even is like people feel safe in the medium, and that it's not this chaotic environment that they're like don't know how to engage with, but you're telling them how to engage with it. And that is leading and even providing value even in that space. And then also just with the stretching and the reading tone and nonverbals, again connecting both to like head, heart, and body, engaging all of it will make everybody feel kind of honored and engaged as well. Really good. Again, if there's any questions, we're coming to the end of our time, but I would love if anybody has questions regarding Enneagram framework, or some of what we talked about, being a digital facilitator and leading people into this new kind of digital environment, or any of the other things that Ashlee's mentioned, please drop it into the chat as we continue this amazing conversation.
Yeah, and honestly, the things I'm saying, and maybe you're like, yeah, I've been doing this, Ashlee. Or maybe this really does feel like new information, or like you're not sure to trust it. I've now done like a handful of 2.5-hour workshops, and at the end, and this is still baffling me a little bit, but when I follow these guidelines, okay, every 10 minutes, something interactive, every 45 minutes to an hour, biological break, stretch, longer breakout sessions, stating the why, that sort of thing. At the end, I'm like, okay, I'll stick on a couple minutes at the end to answer questions, and I'm having everybody stay. And I don't know about you, but after any Zoom call, typically I'm like ready to hang up. And so to me, that's like a win. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like
absolutely.
Trusting the wisdom and value that's already in your audience. Like that is the human connection there, and not positioning yourself as this leader, but leading is really like, what's going on with you? I think there's
we have a question here. What are more ways or examples to help each subtype feel safe and contained in Zoom and other electronic mediums? So I love that that question, the way it's phrased, contained and safe. Maybe walk through the subtypes and what they would need to feel safe and contained in an electronic medium kind of connection.
So there are 27 Enneagram subtypes.
So maybe don't walk through all of them, but maybe.
But I think just based off like our conversation of instincts, maybe I can talk a little bit about that, or even centers. Let me think about that for just a moment, because that's a really good question. And even with the idea of like safe and contained. So something interesting about that language is, oh my gosh, I know how I'm going to answer this. Okay, so I'm going to choose intelligence center. So I apologize that I'm reframing your questions, but I promise it's going to be more helpful. So head types, 5, 6s, and 7s on the Enneagram want to feel safe and contained. So head types are paying attention to what is being said, what is being articulated, the world that is being created through words and imagination. Because what they needed in their development that they were sensitive toward and didn't get was this idea of safety and feeling safe. And this has to do with Margaret Mahler's object relations theory. And when you're a toddler, starting to walk away from your parent figure and looking back, okay, is mom still there? Okay, they are. I'm going to go a little further. And it manifested in these 3 different ways. So ways for head types to feel safe is making sure that when you write out an agenda, being really clear about your why. You know, like Jonathon, you did this so well today. So you're a perfect example. You know, hi, everybody. We're here to hear from Ashlee. This is Fieldwork. This is what Fieldwork's about. We're going to go for about an hour. And if you have a question, write it right there. That is what head types need, is this container, and for you to actually paint what the time is going to look like. And I can't tell you how much this is missed. Like, I'll get on a call and someone won't even say, you know, this is a 45-minute call. This is the purpose of it. And this is what your role is. People want to know what their role is.
Yes. How should I show up to this? Absolutely.
Body types. So types 8, 9, and 1. They had a sensitivity to holding and not being held with Margaret Mahler's object relations theory. So this one's really difficult. And I mentioned heart types need camera on because I'm projecting and that's what I just think I need, but really body types too. You know, cameras on. Are we here? Are we engaged? Yes, I see Jonathon's shoulders are back. He's facing straight on, versus like if I'm like this, or if I'm writing, or maybe I have something in between me, that might be a little off-putting for a body type. I don't know, because I'm not a body type. So if anybody else knows, like, but an idea I have is like doing the stretching or asking people like what your body's telling you today. That's actually why I do those or incorporate that into the workshops. And we just need to remember that body types are receiving that you're there and showing up through your body language and your communication of being there. So in my in-person workshops, I know this is a digital question I'll even recommend, but if you're having conflict with a body type, make sure there's not a desk or a coffee or something in between, but you're really like facing on. And then for heart types, we need to remember that all heart types need is to be heard, known, and seen. And so they need mirroring. And great job, Jonathon.
I'm trying.
Yes, absolutely. I hear you. But also they need you to repeat back what they're saying. So I heard this was your question. Is that right? Oh my gosh, heart types are they can be so expressive, but they also need just space to process, and it takes time to really like engage and be empathetic, because really what was missed with heart types in this object relations theory is being seen. And so there is this grief that's attached with 2s, 3s, and 4s. And now they're just like looking to be seen and known and heard. Also, never tell a heart type how they're feeling. So if you're a head type and you're setting the tone, even saying like, yeah, I know that we're all really stressed right now, that might be a little off-putting to a heart type. You don't know how I'm doing. Ask me how I'm doing. So maybe just making sure that you're asking your heart types how they're doing.
Wow, that is so helpful. I mean, even just on a practical level, like if they need that space, then to build it into the agenda. You know, if processing is really important, then to allow us enough time to make sure that everybody has a turn to process and to mirror back and provide that. Very, very helpful, both digitally and in person, as both are needed. But just super helpful. And even just your last note about don't tell somebody how they're feeling, that presumptive. I'm a head type, so I would think that I was, offering value and being like, I know you're feeling this, I perceive it. And so, but I can see how that can just be a complete miss. with what is really needed. Well, thank you so much, Ashlee. I'd love to just leave a couple minutes for you to do two things. I'm going to go ahead and set the expectations and make you feel very safe and contained. Two things. One, tell everybody where they can find you and kind of follow your work and engage with what you're doing. It's so needed and valuable in the world. And then two, just any parting words of encouragement. These are leaders on this call that are trying to create cultures where people are flourishing, create meaningful work in their companies and for their teams. So any parting words of just encouragement as we kind of head off from here to go do that good work. So yeah, those two things as we wrap up.
Yeah. So you can find me at ashleesirkorski.com. Also on social media platforms. And I'm going to be launching my new brand, and all the people who are on the ashleesirkorski.com email list, you're going to get sneak peeks into what that looks like. I'm so jazzed about that. Yeah, and parting words of wisdom, such a hefty call, but to me, it feels like the world has been jolted, and we're not going to be able to go back how the way things were. So being able to embrace the present, I feel like that's how we're going to be able to make impact. It's being like, okay, like I'm here, this is still my mission, and whether I need to pivot what that vehicle looks like whoa, I need like a whole new brand or a whole new this, or no, I'm just going to do it this way, but it's going to look differently. The world still needs leaders. And especially right now, like as people are jolted and they're stressed and they're looking to people to follow. And if you want to be that type of person, it's going to require opening your eyes, paying attention what's here. I feel like that's something I've really been learning in my own journey lately, is just how much work it takes to be grounded. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of reflection, time, conversation, vulnerability, but it is fruitful and worth it. It's worth the call. And yeah, although I don't know all the companies that are listed here, I'm just imagining when you say like meaningful change, I'm like, thank God that there's companies out there that want to make meaningful change and are going to have large ripple effects. Like that's exciting.
Yeah. Wow. So encouraging. It's just so refreshing to hear that it takes a lot of work, but it's worth it and it's needed. And to really create the future that we're all trying to, it takes embracing the present and what that means for us and our teams and the people we're leading. So Ashlee, thank you so much. And to everybody else that's to follow up on this conversation tomorrow at 9:30 for our members, we'll be doing a group coaching with everybody on the Zoom call. We're going to be doing group coaching. So if a challenge or an opportunity kind of came to mind for you as you're listening to Ashlee share and you want to actually like land this into your own leadership, go ahead and join us for that call tomorrow at 9:30. So we can actually, through a guided process, really see how does this actually play out in my own leadership, and you'll be able to be guided into actually implementing it, some of the things that came about. And I've seen the sneak peek of Ashlee's new brand rollout, and it is amazing. So please go ahead, go to our website, jump on her mailing list so you can stay connected. But Ashlee, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate all of your insights and this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me and being a part of Fieldwork. You guys are doing, I'm trying to see the world a little bit more black and white. And if I'm going to see the world more black and white, you guys are doing it right from what I see. So thank you for being here.
Yep, you heard it here first, folks. We're doing it right. But no, everybody on here is doing amazing.
We're doing it right.
Continue to lead well and create that meaningful work. So have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.